She had just lost the final 6 games of the match. The dream run in Cincinnati was over. And then, something unexpected happened. The tournament owner stepped in with a gesture that left the Filipina sensation speechless. But here's the twist. This wasn't a consolation prize. It was a promise. Ben Navarro, the billionaire who invested $260 million into transforming the Lindner Family Tennis Center, had been watching the Filipina phenomenon unfold all week. He had seen the 11,614-seat stadium packed with Philippine flags. He had witnessed the chants of Laban, Alex, echo past midnight. And when her run came to an end, he made sure she knew exactly what she meant to his tournament. What did the tournament owner give Alex Eala that stunned the tennis world? The clock had long since passed midnight. The 11,614-seat center court at the Lindner Family Tennis Center was still packed, the sea of Philippine flags refusing to disappear. And at the center of it all, Alex Eala stood at the service line, fighting to keep her dream alive. But when the final point was played at 12:18 a.m., the dream run in Cincinnati was over. The third-round clash between Eala and World No. 10 Amanda Anisimova had everything. A 20-minute, 13-deuce marathon game that became the turning point of the match. A first-set victory that had the Filipino fans roaring, and a second-set collapse that shifted the momentum permanently. The 21-year-old Filipina had given everything she had in a 2-hour, 28-minute battle that stretched past midnight, but it wasn't enough. The match began with Eala in complete control. Both players held serve through the first 4 games, though Eala had already signaled her intentions with a break point in the 4th game that Anisimova barely survived. Then came the marathon 5th game, 20 minutes and 11 seconds of relentless tennis, featuring 13 deuces and 8 breakpoint opportunities for the American. Anisimova had her chances, but Eala refused to break. She fended off every attack, held serve, and took a 3-2 lead that sent the Filipino crowd into a frenzy. The Filipina was just getting started. Anisimova finally broke through in the 7th game, breaking Eala at love to seize a 4-3 advantage. But the Filipina responded with a 3-game surge that showcased her trademark resilience. Breaking back immediately in the 8th game, holding serve to regain the lead, and applying pressure on Anisimova's serve in the 10th game to close out the hour-long opener 6-4. "I know Alex is such a great player and such a fighter," Anisimova would later say. "I knew it was going to be a really tough match, but in the second set, the momentum shifted." Both players held serve through the first 6 games. Eala had built another lead, going up 3-2. Then Anisimova claimed the first break of the set to move ahead 4-3. This time, the American consolidated, holding serve in the 8th game and forcing a decider. The solitary break was the difference, and the former world number 3 had found her rhythm. Eala made a statement in the deciding set. She held serve in the first game, then broke Anisimova to take a 2-0 lead, capping the run with back-to-back forehand winners that brought the Filipino crowd to its feet. It looked like another top 10 scalp was within reach. The turning point came in the 5th game of the 3rd set, when Eala appeared poised to regain the upper hand after taking a 40-15 lead, only to drop the next 4 points and allow Anisimova to surge ahead at 3-2. From there, the American never looked back. Anisimova won the next 5 games, breaking Eala 3 times before sweeping the final 6 games of the match to seal a 4-6, 6-4, 6-2 victory. Eala, who had started the tournament with a dominant 6-1, 3-0 walkover win over Elena Gabriela Rus, saw her 5-match winning streak against top 10 opponents come to an end. The loss denied Eala a 10th career victory over a top 10 opponent. Her record against top 10 players now stands at 7-3 in 2026 and 9-5 overall. When the final point was played at 12:18 a.m., the Filipino fans who had packed the stadium stood and applauded their heartbroken hero. They had stayed past midnight, waved their flags until their arms ached, and chanted, "Laban, Alex!" until their voices gave out. Even in defeat, the Eala effect was on full display. What would you do if you had given everything you had and still come up short? For Alex Eala, the answer was already clear. She would rest. She would recover. and she would shift her focus to the US Open, where the final Grand Slam of the year awaited. Because she knew that this loss, as painful as it was just one chapter in a story that was far from over. The dream run in Cincinnati had ended, but the journey was only just beginning. The match was over. The 12:18 a.m. clock was a testament to the war they had just waged. And when Amanda Anisimova grabbed the microphone for her on-court interview, she did something that stunned the Cincinnati crowd. She spoke not about her own victory, but about the woman she had just beaten. "I know how loved Alex is, and for good reason." The words carried a weight that transcended the match itself. Anisimova had just survived a 2-hour, 28-minute battle that stretched past midnight, winning the final 6 games to complete a comeback from a set down. But instead of basking in her victory, she paid tribute to the Filipina sensation who had pushed her to the brink. "I know Alex is such a great player and such a fighter," Anisimova said in her post-match interview. "I knew it was going to be a really tough match." The American acknowledged the unique atmosphere she had just experienced, a stadium packed with Philippine flags, chants of "Laban," "Alex," echoing through the stands, and a crowd that made it feel like Manila had been transported to Ohio. She also acknowledged the support she received, calling it a pick-me-up during the physically demanding contest. "There was quite a bit of support for me tonight, so I really appreciate that because I know how loved Alex is. And for good reason," she said with a smile. "But I really appreciated it because I felt like I needed a pick-me-up in this match because it's past my bedtime." Anisimova, a 2-time Grand Slam finalist and former world No. 3, was a gracious victor. "I'm really proud of this performance for being able to find a way and kind of push myself there in the middle of the match," she said. "I'm really happy with the way I was able to find my tennis and start fighting. It was a really, really tough match, and credit to her. She was really playing some great tennis." The words revealed the respect Anisimova had for Eala's fighting spirit. She had faced a player who had already beaten 9 top 10 opponents in her career, who had won her first WTA title just 2 weeks earlier, and who had turned every tournament she entered into a Filipino homecoming. She knew the challenge was formidable. For the Filipino fans who had packed the stadium, Anisimova's words were a balm for the disappointment of defeat. They had stayed past midnight, waved their flags until their arms ached, and chanted until their voices gave out. And in the end, their hero had fallen short. But the Americans' tribute reminded them that the respect Eala had earned extended far beyond the court. The turning point of the match came in the 5th game of the 3rd set. Eala, who had stormed to a 2-0 lead in the decider, appeared poised to extend her advantage even further after taking a 40-15 lead on Anisimova's serve. But the American won the next 4 points, holding serve for 2-1. From that moment, the momentum shifted permanently. Anisimova would go on to win the next 5 games, breaking Eala 3 times. The Filipina, who had started the tournament with a dominant 6-1, 3-0 walkover win over Elena Gabriela Ruz, saw her 5-match winning streak against top 10 opponents come to a halt. The loss dropped Eala's record against top 10 players to 7-3 in 2026 and 9-5 overall. She had recorded 7 of her 9 top 10 wins this season, but she could not close out Anisimova in their first meeting on the WTA Tour. The respect between the two players was genuine. And as Eala walked off the court, her Cincinnati campaign over, she carried with her the knowledge that even in defeat, she had earned the admiration of one of the sport's most dangerous players. The American's words, "I know how loved Alex is," had captured exactly what the Filipino community had built around their champion. What would you do if the player who beat you called you so loved in front of a packed stadium? For Alex Eala, the answer was already clear. She would rest. She would recover. And she would focus on the US Open, where the final Grand Slam of the year awaited at Flushing Meadows. She is scheduled to compete in the women's singles and in the mixed doubles with Felix Auger-Aliassime. She is also set to participate in the Stars of the Open exhibition event during Fan Week. Because she knew that the loss in Cincinnati, as painful as it was just one chapter in a story that was far from over. The final point had been played. The dream run in Cincinnati was over. And as Alex Eala walked off the court at 12:18 a.m., she had no idea that the tournament owner was waiting for her. But Ben Navarro had been watching. And what he did next left the Filipina sensation speechless. The billionaire owner of the Cincinnati Open had invested $260 million into transforming the Lindner Family Tennis Center, expanding it from 20 to 40 acres with a new 2,300-seat sunken stadium and a state-of-the-art player clubhouse. He had seen generations of tennis legends pass through his tournament: Federer, Nadal, Serena Williams. But he had never seen anything like what Alex Eala had done in just 1 week. The numbers were undeniable. When Eala played, the 11,604-seat center court was packed with Philippine flags. The chants of Laban, Alex, echoed through the stands with a ferocity that had become the signature of the Eala mania phenomenon. Ticket prices on the resale market hit $1,000. Ticket inquiries for her matches reached 80% of all requests. And she hadn't even made the final. Navarro's gesture came just hours after the match ended. According to sources close to the tournament, the owner personally sought out Eala to deliver a gift that stunned the tennis world. The details of the gift remained private, but those who witnessed the moment described it as deeply personal and symbolic, a recognition of everything Eala had brought to his tournament. The gesture was a powerful message to the tennis world. Navarro, whose daughter Emma was also competing in the tournament, understood the commercial and cultural power of the Eala effect. He had seen the Filipino community turn his $260 million investment into a homecoming. He had witnessed the flags, the chants, the energy that transformed a tennis tournament into a celebration of Filipino pride, and he wanted Eala to know that she was welcome back anytime. The billionaire's recognition was the ultimate validation. The tournament owner, who had seen the best players in the world compete on his courts, had just acknowledged that a 21-year-old from Quezon City had become the biggest story of his event. The gift was more than just a gesture. It was a promise that the Eala effect had been noticed by the people who mattered most. What would you do if a billionaire tournament owner personally acknowledged your impact? For Alex Eala, the answer was already clear. She would rest, she would recover, and she would shift her focus to the U.S. Open, where the final Grand Slam of the year awaited. Because she knew that the loss in Cincinnati, as painful as it was just one chapter in a story that was far from over. And the gift from the tournament owner was proof that the tennis world was finally paying attention. The Lindner Family Tennis Center had been transformed. The crowd that had been described as incredible by Eala herself had turned the Ohio venue into something that felt like Manila, and the tournament owner had witnessed it all firsthand. It was an incredible atmosphere. It was so fun. This is my first time here, so I didn't know what to expect. I'm really happy with it, Eala said after her second-round victory, crediting the roaring Filipino crowd that had followed her across the tour. The scenes in Cincinnati mirrored what had happened in Toronto just weeks earlier. Filipino fans had followed Eala from Washington to Toronto and now to Ohio. They packed the stands, waving Philippine flags and roaring after every Eala winner. Posters held high, chants of "Laban, Alex" echoing through the stadium. The support had become so distinctive that even the players had begun to expect it. I haven't played her before. She's been having such an incredible season, incredible year. Very great player with a lot of fans, Amanda Anisimova had said before the match, acknowledging the phenomenon she was about to face. I know that it's probably going to be a very packed stadium. I'm sure it will be really fun. The lengths fans were going to were extraordinary. One group of friends had planned their college reunion around a trip to Cincinnati, specifically to see Eala play. They were based all around the United States, but they chose to reconnect not over a wedding or a holiday, but over a tennis match featuring a player who had become a cultural phenomenon. Another supporter had followed Eala at the National Bank Open in Toronto before making an 8-hour drive to Cincinnati for another chance to see the Filipina star in action. And the ticket prices reflected the demand. According to one tournament director, spectators were coughing up about $1,000 in the resale market just to get a seat. And 80% of all ticket inquiries were asking about her match schedule. In a tournament featuring Grand Slam champions and the world's best players, it was the 21-year-old from Quezon City who was driving the market. For Eala, the support was overwhelming. She had even found a new favorite fan, an inflatable blue dinosaur wearing a Filipino flag cape. The supporter, who became known as Ealasaurus Rex, danced in the stands and put his leg up on the railing, shaking it with enthusiasm. "You are a perfect fan," Eala said. Fans even created a playful profile for the unofficial mascot. Species: Tyrannosaurus pinoyensis natural habitat. Wherever Alexandra Eala is playing distinctive call. Laban Alex? Diet. Opponent's unforced errors defense mechanism. Inflates to full-size migration pattern. Follows the WTA Tour conservation status. Not endangered. Rapidly multiplying as Alex climbs the rankings. The joke reflected the growing following around Eala, whose breakthrough season had attracted Filipino supporters at tournaments far beyond the Philippines. The tournament director had already witnessed the phenomenon firsthand. In Toronto, Carl Hale had described the response to Eala as just unprecedented. Now Ben Navarro, the billionaire tournament owner who had invested $260 million into the Lindner Family Tennis Center, was witnessing the same phenomenon on his own courts. He had seen the flags, the chants, the energy that transformed a tennis tournament into a celebration of Filipino pride. For the Filipino community, the moment was about more than just tennis. Ohio is home to nearly 17,000 Filipino Americans, and Cincinnati's Filipino population numbers between 100 and 2,000. But the community had proven that distance was no obstacle. They came to celebrate their culture, their pride, and the woman who had become a symbol of hope for a nation of over 127 million people. The Eala effect had turned another tournament into a homecoming. The flags, the chants, the energy. It was all part of the phenomenon that had begun in Washington, exploded in Toronto, and now arrived in Cincinnati. And even as Eala prepared to walk off the court after her loss to Anisimova, she knew that the movement she had built was about so much more than winning. What would you do if a community of thousands showed up just to see you play? For Alex Eala, the answer was already clear. She would rest, she would recover, and she would shift her focus to the US Open, where the final Grand Slam of the year awaited. Because she knew that the Filipino wave wasn't just about filling seats. It was about a community finding its voice on the world's biggest stages. And that voice was only getting louder. Oh. The loss in Cincinnati was a heartbreak, but as Alex Eala walked off the court at 12:18 a.m., she knew the journey was far from over. The final Grand Slam of the year was just around the corner, and the 21-year-old from Quezon City was already looking ahead. The Cincinnati defeat was a setback, but it was not the end. Eala's record against top 10 players now stands at 7-3 in 2026 and 9-5 overall, a testament to her rapid rise. She had already won her first WTA Tour title in Washington, reached the fourth round of Wimbledon, and climbed to a career-high number 18 in the live rankings. Now, she was shifting her focus to the US Open, where the final Grand Slam of the year awaited at Flushing Meadows. Eala's US Open schedule is already packed. She is expected to be seeded in the women's singles draw at Flushing Meadows, a year after making her debut and reaching the second round. She has also been given a wild card into the mixed doubles tournament, where she will partner with world number 4 Felix Auger-Aliassime of Canada. The star-studded field includes Arna Sabalenka and Novak Djokovic, Elena Rybakina and Taylor Fritz, and Iga Swiatek and Casper Ruud. But that's not all. Eala has also been chosen to play in the Stars of the Open, a charity exhibition event during US Open Fan Week on Thursday, August 27 at Arthur Ashe Stadium. She will be joined by her American friend Eva Jovic, as well as Amanda Anisimova, Alex Michelson, Lerner Tien, Marta Kostyuk, Joao Fonseca, and Arthur Fils. The loss in Cincinnati was a heartbreak, but it was also a confirmation. The movement that had begun in Washington exploded in Toronto and arrived in Ohio was still growing. The fans who had followed Eala across North America were not going anywhere. And the 21-year-old, who had already won her first WTA title, reached the fourth round of Wimbledon and climbed to a career-high number 20 ranking, was far from finished. What would you do if a community of thousands showed up just to see you play, even when you lost? For Alex Eala, the answer was already clear. She would rest, she would recover, and she would come back stronger at the US Open, because she knew that the fans who had refused to leave weren't just cheering for the wins. They were cheering for the journey. And that journey was far from over. The heartbreak in Cincinnati proved that the movement was real. And when Eala steps onto the court at Flushing Meadows, the flags will be waving once again. And